The Joe Rogan Experience.
The translation into like the superintelligence scenario is, if we don't have our reps in, if we don't know how to reach out and touch an adversary and induce consequence for them doing the same to us, then we have no deterrence at all. Like we're basically just sitting right now. The state of security is the labs are like super, and like we can and probably should go deep on that piece. But like as one data point, right? So there's like double-digit percentages of the world's top AI labs or America's top AI labs.
Employees
that are like Chinese nationals or have ties to the Chinese mainland, right? So that's great. Why don't we build the Manhattan Project?
Yeah, it's really funny, right?
Like,
That's so stupid.
But it's also like the challenge is when you talk to people who actually, when you talk to people who actually have experience dealing with like CCP activity in this space, right? Like there's one story that we heard that is probably worth like relaying here. Is like this guy from an intelligence agency was saying like, hey, so there was this power outage out in Berkeley, California back in like 2019 or something. And the internet goes out across the whole campus. And so there's this dorm and like all of the Chinese students are freaking out because they have an obligation to do a time-based check-in and basically report back on everything they've seen and heard to basically a CCP handler type thing.
Right.
And if they don't, like, maybe your mother's insulin doesn't show up. Maybe your like brother's travel plans get denied. Maybe a family business gets shut down. Like there's the range of options that this massive CCP state coercion machine has. This is like, they've got like software for this. Like this is an institutionalized, like very well developed and efficient framework for just ratcheting up pressure on individuals overseas. And they believe the Chinese diaspora overseas belongs to them. If you look at like what the Chinese Communist Party writes in its written like public communications, they see like Chinese ethnicity as being a green. Like no one is a bigger victim of this than the Chinese people themselves who are abroad, who have made amazing contributions to American AI innovation. You just have to look at the names on the friggin' papers. It's like these guys are wicked. But the problem is we also have to look head on at this reality. Like you can't just be like, oh, I'm not going to say it because it makes me feel funny inside. Someone has to stand up and point out the obvious that if you're going to build a fucking Manhattan Project for superintelligence, and the idea is to like be doing that when China is a key rival nation state actor, yeah, you're going to have to find a way to account for the personnel security side. Like at some point, someone's going to have to do something about that.
And it's like you can see they're hitting us right where we're weak, right? Like America's the place where you come and you remake yourself, like send us you're tired and you're hungry and you're poor. And
which is true and important.
It's true and important, but they're playing right off of that because they know that we just don't want to look at that problem. You know?
And Chinese nationals working on these things is just bananas. The fact they have to check in with the CCP.
Yeah.
And are they being monitored? I mean, how much can you monitor them? What do you know that they have? What equipment have they been given?
You can't constitutionally, right?
Yeah,
you
the
can't
best part, constitutionally, it's also you can't legally deny someone employment on that basis in a private company. So that's something else we found and we're kind of amazed by. And even honestly, just like the regular kind of government clearance process itself is inadequate. It moves way too slowly, and it doesn't actually even in the government. We were talking about top secret clearances. The information that they like look at for top secret, we heard from a couple of people, doesn't include a lot of like key sources. So for example, it doesn't include like foreign language sources. So if the head of the Ministry of State Security in China writes a blog post that says like, Bob is like the best spy. He spied so hard for us, and he's like an awesome spy. If that blog post is written in Chinese, we're not going to see it, and we're going to be like, "Here's your clearance, Bob. Congratulations!" Like, and we were like, that can't possibly be real, but like, yeah, they're like, "Yep, that's true."
No one's looking. It's complete naivete.
There's gaps in
every level of the stack.
A lot of the
One of the worst things here is like
that's so crazy.
Yeah, the physical infrastructure. So the personnel thing is like fucked up. The physical infrastructure thing is another area where people don't want to look, because if you start looking, what you start to realize is, okay, China makes like a lot of our like components for our transformers for the electrical grid. Yep, but also all these chips that are going into our big data centers for these massive training runs, where do they come from? They come from Taiwan. They come from this company called TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. We're increasingly onshoring that, by the way, which is one of the best things that's been happening lately, is like massive amounts of TSMC capacity getting onshored in the US, but still being made. Right now, it's basically like 100% there. All you have to do is jump on the network at TSMC, hack the right network, compromise the firmware on the software that runs on these chips to get them to run, and you basically can compromise all the chips going into all of these things. Never mind the fact that like Taiwan is like physically outside the Chinese sphere of influence for now. China is going to be prioritizing the fuck out of getting access to that. There have been cases, by the way, like Richard Chang, like the founder of SMIC, which is the TSMC, this massive like series of aircraft carrier fabrication facilities.
They do like
chips.
all the iPhone chips.
Yeah.
They do the AI chips, which are the things we care about here.
Yeah, they're the only place on planet Earth that does this. It's literally it's fascinating. It's like the most easily the most advanced manufacturing or scientific process that primates on planet Earth can do. Is this chip making process,
nanoscale like material science, where you're putting on like these tiny like atom thick layers of stuff, and you're doing like 300 of them in a row with like you have like insulators and conductors and different kinds of like semiconductors in these tunnels and shit. Just like the complexity of it is just awe-inspiring. That we can do this at all is like it's magic.
Insane.
It's magic.
And it's really only being done in Taiwan.
That is the only place, like truly the only place right now.
Wow.
And so a Chinese invasion of Taiwan just looks pretty interesting through that lens, right?
Boy.
Like,
yeah.
Say goodbye to the iPhone, say goodbye to like the chip supply that we rely on, and then your superintelligence training run, like, damn, that's interesting.
So I know Samsung was trying to develop a lab here or a semiconductor factory here, and they weren't having enough success.
Oh, so one of the craziest things, to illustrate how hard it is to do. So you spend $50 billion, again, an aircraft carrier, we're throwing that around here and there, but an aircraft carrier worth of risk capital. What does that mean? That means you build the fab, the factory, and it's not guaranteed it's going to work. At first, this factory is pumping out these chips at like yields that are really low. In other words, like only 20% of the chips that they're putting out are even useful, and that just makes it totally economically unviable. So you're just trying to increase that yield and desperately climb up higher and higher. Intel famously found this so hard that they have this philosophy where when they build a new fab, the philosophy is called copy exactly. Everything down to the color of the paint on the walls in the bathroom is copied from other fabs that actually worked, because they have no idea why a fucking fab works and another one doesn't.
We got this to work. We got this to work. It's like, oh my God, we got this to work. I can't believe we got this to work. So we have to make it exactly identical, because the expensive thing in the semiconductor manufacturing process is the learning curve. So like Jer said, you start by like putting through a whole bunch of like the starting material for the chips, which are called wafers. You put them through your fab. The fab has got like 500 dials on it. And every one of those dials has got to be in the exact right place or the whole fucking thing doesn't work. So you send a bunch of wafers in at great expense. They come out all fucked up in the first run. It's just like it's going to be all fucked up in the first run. Then what do? You get a bunch of like PhDs, material scientists, like engineers with scanning electron microscopes, because all this shit is like atomic scale tiny. They look at like all the chips and all the stuff that's gone wrong, and like, oh shit, these pathways got fused or whatever. Like, yeah, you just need that level of expertise. And then
it's a mix, right? Like
it's a mix. It's a mix now in particular. But like, yeah, you absolutely need humans looking at these things at a certain level. And then they go, well, okay, like I've got a hypothesis about what might have gone wrong in that run. Let's tweak this dial like this and this dial like that and run the whole thing again. And you hear these stories about bringing a fab online. Like you need a certain percentage of good chips coming out the other end, or like you can't make money from the fab because most of your shit is just going right into the garbage.
Unless, and this is important too, your fab is state subsidized. So when you look at TSMC is like they're alone in the world in terms of being able to pump out these chips. But SMIC, This is the Chinese knockoff of TSMC, founded, by the way, by a former senior TSMC executive, Richard Chung, who leaves along with a bunch of other people with a bunch of fucking secrets. They get sued like in the early 2000s. It's pretty obvious what happened there. Like, to most people, they're like, yeah, SMIC fucking stole that shit. They bring a new fab online in like a year or two, which is suspiciously fast, start pumping out chips. And now the Chinese ecosystem is ratcheting up, like the government is pouring money into SMIC because they know that like they can't access TSMC chips anymore because the US government's put pressure on Taiwan to block that off. And so domestic fab in China is all about SMIC. And they are like, it's a disgusting amount of money they're putting in. They're teaming up with Huawei to form like this complex of companies that it's really interesting. I mean, the semiconductor industry in China in particular is really, really interesting. It's also a massive story of like self-owns of the United States and the Western world, where we've been just shipping a lot of our shit to them for a long time.
Like the equipment that builds the chips. So like, and it's also like, it's so blatant, and like they're just, honestly, a lot of the stuff is just like, they're just giving us like a big fuck you. So give you a really blatant example. So we have the way we set up export controls still today on most equipment that these semiconductor fabs use, like the Chinese semiconductor fabs use. We're still sending them a whole bunch of shit. The way we set export controls is instead of like, oh, we're sending this gear to China and like now it's in China and we can't do anything about it. Instead, we still have this thing where we're like, no, this company in China is cool. That company in China is not cool. So we can ship to this company, but we can't ship to that company. And so you get this ridiculous shit. Like, for example, there's like a couple of facilities that you could see by satellite. One of the facilities is okay to ship equipment to. The other facility right next door is like considered, military connected or whatever, and so we can't ship. The Chinese literally built a bridge between the two facilities so they can just like shimmy the wafers over to like, oh, yeah, we use equipment, and then shimmy it back, and now, okay, we're done. So it's like, and you can see it by satellite, so they're not even like trying to hide it. Like our stuff is just like so badly put together.
China's prioritizing this so highly that like the idea that we're gonna, so we do it by company through this, basically it's like an export blacklist. Like you can't send to Huawei, you can't send to any number of other companies that are considered affiliated with the Chinese military or where we're concerned about military applications. The reality is in China, civil military fusion is their policy. In other words, every private company, like, yeah, that's cute, dude. You're working for yourself. Yeah, no, buddy. You're working for the Chinese state. We come in, we want your shit, we get your shit. There's no like, there's no true kind of distinction between the two.
Right.
And so when you have this attitude where you're like, yeah, we're gonna have some companies where we're like, you can't send to them, but you can, that creates the situation where literally Huawei will spin up like a dozen subsidiaries or new companies with new names that aren't on our blacklist, and so. Like for months or years, you're able to just ship chips to them. Nowhere, and that's to say nothing of like using intermediaries in like Singapore or other countries.
Oh yeah,
which
you wouldn't believe the number of AI chips that are shipping to Malaysia. Can't wait for the latest like huge language model to come out of Malaysia. And actually, it's just proxying for the most part. There's some amount of stuff actually going on in Malaysia, but for the most part, it's
how can the United States compete? If you're thinking about all these different factors, you're thinking about espionage, people that are students from the CCP connected, contacting. You're talking about all the different network equipment that has third-party input. You could siphon off data, and then on top of that, state-funded. Everything is encouraged by the state, inexorably connected. You can't get away from it. You do what's best for the Chinese government.
Well, so step one is you got to stem the bleeding, right? So right now, OpenAI pumps out a new massive scaled AI model. You better believe that like the CCP has a really good chance that they're going to get their hands on that, right? So if all you do right now is you ratchet up capabilities, it's like that meme of like there's a motorboat or something and some guy who's like surfing behind and there's a string attaching them and the motorboat guy goes like, hurry up, like accelerate, they're catching up. That's kind of what's happening right now is we're helping them accelerate.
We're pulling them along basically.
Pulling them along. Now. I will say, like, over the last 6 months especially, where our focus has shifted is, like, how do we actually build, like, the secure data center? Like, what does it look like to actually lock this down? And also, crucially, you don't want the security measures to be so irritating and invasive that they slow down the progress. Like there's this kind of dance that you have to do. We actually, so this is part of what was in the redacted version of the report, because we don't want to telegraph that necessarily.